Did you know that piracy didn't start with treasure maps and parrots? Long before the golden age of pirates, there was the first pirate. But who was this mysterious figure, and what drove them to risk it all on the high seas? The answers might surprise you, and they reveal much more about human survival and rebellion than you'd ever expect. Welcome to the hidden world of piracy. Forget the swashbuckling tales you've seen in movies. This is the raw, untold story of the very first pirate, a figure who defied empires, escaped poverty, and sparked a global phenomenon. Today, we'll explore their world, uncover why they chose piracy, and see how their daring actions shaped history. Let's dive in. Piracy wasn't born out of greed or adventure. It was born out of necessity. Imagine being pushed to the edge by poverty, oppression, or war. For some, the only way out was through rebellion. The seas offered freedom, resources, and an escape from tyrannical systems. But who was the first to take this leap? Was it an act of desperation or a calculated choice? And why did their story ignite a legacy that continues to fascinate us today? To answer these questions, we need to trace the roots of piracy back to the ancient world. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is piracy? Simply put, piracy is robbery on the high seas. But it's so much more than that. It's rebellion. It's survival. It's a slap in the face to the powerful who thought they owned the oceans. Piracy has existed for as long as people have sailed ships. Wherever there was wealth to steal and power to challenge, there were pirates. But in the beginning, piracy wasn't about buried treasure or wooden ships. It was about survival and a hunger for freedom. To find the origins of piracy, we need to travel back over 3,000 years to the 14th century BCE. This was the time of the Sea Peoples, one of the most mysterious and feared groups in ancient history. They weren't just pirates. They were raiders who disrupted entire civilizations. The Sea Peoples terrorized the Mediterranean, attacking trade ships and coastal cities. Egyptian records describe them as a destructive force that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Pharaoh Ramses III himself led battles against them, trying to protect Egypt from their relentless attacks. But who were they? Some historians believe they were displaced groups, refugees fleeing famine or war. To survive, they turned to the sea, attacking ships and plundering supplies. Others see them as organized warriors with a strategic purpose. One thing's for sure, their actions set the stage for piracy as we know it today. They showed that the sea wasn't just a place for trade. It was a battleground, a place where the desperate could fight back against the powerful. Fast forward to the 3rd century BCE, and piracy becomes something even bigger. It's no longer just survival. It's a political weapon. Enter Queen Teuta of Illyria, one of history's first known pirate leaders. Teuta ruled a kingdom along the Adriatic coast, and her people relied on piracy to sustain their economy. Under her command, Illyrian pirates targeted Roman merchant ships, plundering their goods and growing wealthier with each raid. But Teuta wasn't just a criminal. She was a defiant ruler. When Rome demanded that she put an end to the piracy, her response was bold. She refused. In fact, she argued that piracy was a tradition and a right. This defiance led to the First Illyrian War, as Rome sought to crush her piracy-driven empire. Though she ultimately lost, Queen Teuta's story is a reminder that piracy wasn't always about personal gain. Sometimes, it was about resisting larger powers and asserting independence. Let's move to another early example, Dionysius of Phocaea. If Queen Teuta represents organized, state-supported piracy, Dionysius represents the lone outlaw. In the 6th century BCE, Phocaea, a Greek city, fell to the Persian Empire. Faced with conquest, Dionysius chose a different path. Instead of surrendering, he fled with a small fleet of ships. With no home, no allies, and no resources, Dionysius turned to piracy. He and his crew attacked merchant vessels, stealing supplies and wealth to survive. Over time, they became infamous, feared across the Mediterranean. For Dionysius, piracy wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. He couldn't go back to his city, and the sea was his only option. His story highlights a recurring theme in piracy. It often arises when people have nowhere else to turn. By now you might be wondering, if piracy was such a big problem, why didn't empires just stop it? The truth is they tried, but piracy was like a weed. You could cut it down in one place and it would pop up somewhere else. One of the main reasons was inequality. Empires like Rome and Egypt controlled vast amounts of wealth, but the majority of people lived in poverty. For those at the bottom, piracy was a way to fight back, to take what they couldn't earn within the system. Empires also relied on the sea for trade, making it nearly impossible to defend every ship and port. This imbalance created opportunities for pirates to thrive. And then there's the pirate lifestyle. On a pirate ship, leadership was earned, not inherited. Loot was divided equally, and everyone had a say. This sense of freedom and fairness was a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchies of the time, making piracy incredibly appealing to those who had been oppressed. Here's a fun fact. Even Julius Caesar had a run-in with pirates. In 75 BCE, he was captured by Cilician pirates while sailing the Aegean Sea. They demanded a ransom, and Caesar, in true Caesar fashion, demanded they ask for more because he believed he was worth it. After his release, Caesar returned with a fleet and captured the pirates, crucifying them as a warning. The Cilician pirates were some of the most notorious of their time, operating out of modern-day Turkey. They didn't just steal. They kidnapped wealthy Romans, ransomed them, and even sold slaves. Their operations were so well organized that they posed a serious threat to the Roman Empire. But even after Caesar's retaliation, piracy didn't disappear. Why? Because the conditions that created pirates, inequality, oppression, and the lure of freedom, still existed. The turning point in early piracy came in 67 BCE, when the Roman Senate gave Pompey the great extraordinary powers to eliminate pirates. In just 3 months, Pompey's fleet swept across the Mediterranean, capturing thousands of pirates and destroying their strongholds. It was one of the most efficient anti-piracy campaigns in history. But even Pompey couldn't eliminate piracy entirely. Why? Because piracy wasn't just about crime. It was about survival. And as long as people faced poverty, oppression, and exploitation, piracy would find a way to resurface. So who was the first pirate? The truth is, there wasn't just one. The Sea People's Queen Teuta, Dionysius of Phocaea, they all represent different facets of piracy's origins. Piracy wasn't just a choice. It was a reaction to a world where the rich exploited the poor, where empires ruled with an iron fist, and where the seas offered a glimmer of freedom. The first pirate wasn't just a thief. They were a rebel, a survivor, and a pioneer. Their story reminds us that history isn't just about kings and empires. It's about the people who dared to challenge them. Want more stories about pirate history? Hit subscribe and let's set sail on the next adventure.